So, welcome to the Beacon of Light podcast. We're here with Kelly Olsen, and we're going to let Kelly talk about, where she is, your background, um, and then we also have Sarah, who is going to assist us with some questions and some conversations, right? But I wanted to start with what you and I, what you and I talked about, which is what our common value system, if that's what we want to call it, belief
Mm-hmm.
in the man upstairs.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
For me, and I think you will agree, because people have probably said, "Oh, Kelly, you're a doctor. You are this and you are that." But at the end of the day, we don't have anything without Jesus Christ,
Right.
right? That's what I say often. I'm nothing without him, and because of him, I have everything.
Mm-hmm.
And we share that, which
Right.
is why I think you agreed to come on and talk about your beliefs
Right.
and what our common goal is with him in mind. And that is to talk about what our problems are with this drug addiction pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's created. We agree,
Yeah.
okay? And what our objectives are. We are united with your company, and for everybody out there, with reference to the drug and alcohol addiction world, we have to hold people accountable with our urinalysis exams. That's what we use,
Right.
okay? And so those exams we currently have landed onto your company with good reason, and you are the doctor, correct?
Mm-hmm.
That's overseeing that program. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Right. Well, thank you both for having me today. This is awesome. It's a long time coming, but I'm glad it
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
happened. So this is awesome. Thank you. So my background, I started in law enforcement. And so I saw addiction from a very different light. I saw it from, I'm going to say, a grittier side. I'm going to say, like it was people chose to do that. This was something that, you know what, they chose to do that, that line of coke, or they chose to do this or that, and it was our job to make sure that they were safe after everything was done, that the people around them were safe, and that they didn't commit a crime. I mean, that's essentially it. It's safety. It's law enforcement and safety. Then I decided that I wanted to get into medicine because I felt a different calling. And so I got into medicine, and what I learned was I was looking at about an inch thick and not very deep. So, or an inch wide, I should say, or a mile wide and an inch deep, as people say, instead of really looking at the issues that people in addiction were facing. And I'm going to be the first one to tell you guys that I've not even smoked a cigarette. So I know what happens chemically, but I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, yeah, so, it's really easy to stop. It's really easy to get into treatment. It's really easy to X, Y, and Z, because I don't know that behavioral part. What I do know, and what I'm very familiar with, is what happens in the brain and how it affects people differently, a different addiction. And addiction doesn't have to be doing a line of cocaine or getting a dirty 30 from the street. Addiction can be gambling, it can be sex addictions, it can be
Sugar.
any sugar, it can be any number of things that have such a hold on your life that your brain is hijacked. Your brain and body are hijacked.
So this
Yeah.
is what I've been wanting to discuss at Beacon since, 2019.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted, and this is why I'm so pleased that you're here. What is in heroin, right? What
Mm-hmm.
is in meth? What is in the alcohol? What is in these substances, right? And then whatever that is that's in that is doing this to your brain. That's making you think, right, that you must do this. And my take is, could you hear people, family members, why are they picking that drug over us? And I don't think that they're doing that. I don't think they're picking the drug. I think that they're picking their very, because in their mind, it's their survival
Right.
because of what's being released in the brain, because of what's in it.
Mm-hmm.
So, from a medical perspective, this is a conversation that I'm very interested in hearing you go over what's in that stuff, And what is it doing to your brain that's making you think you have to do it? Does
Right.
that make any sense?
Yeah, those are great questions for sure. And that's what kind of leads me to the term, and you've heard this before. I'm not the one who coined it, but the hijacking of the brain.
Yeah.
I'm not saying as people that we don't have choices to do or not to do or to sit or to, pause or to whatever it is that we do. We're still stewards of our own lives. But when you start to bring in substances that lead to those addictive behaviors or addictive choices or choices by a hijacked brain, let's put it that way, what's happening in the brain is whatever that thing or substance is, whether it's a stimulant or an opioid or heading to Vegas or whatever that may be. What's happening is it's not necessarily the substance itself, but it's what the components, what the parts of that substance or that place or that person or that whatever, what it does to the brain. And you asked a very good question. Okay, so walk us through that. Well, what's happening is that there's a trigger there somehow, whether it's chemical, whether it's perceived, and that trigger is leading to this cascade of the brain releasing substances called dopamine, serotonin. Think of them like little molecules floating through our bodies that basically bring our moods up or down, or they make us feel like we've
And the
accomplished something.
molecules are, they're in us,
They're in us.
right?
They're in
They're
us.
there.
Yes.
And these substances are bringing them from wherever it is they are
Mm-hmm.
and giving us just a mad rush of them
Right.
in our brains. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
That is
Like we're
correct.
talking a lot.
Yes.
So much so that we were like, oh, wow, this is really good.
Right.
That,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
Okay.
And coupled with, they always say, and I say they because this is something that I've only studied on the periphery. My background is in cognitive function, so brain function, um, thinking, cognitive dysfunction, what it's like when someone can't focus, or I mean, those are the kinds of things. Alzheimer's disease, you name it. That's where I did my training. The real behavioral side of something like an addiction is something that I'm learning as I go. And what I mean by that is that that dopamine dump that we're talking about, or that serotonin dopamine release in the brain from a substance. So again, a line of cocaine or an opioid or a whatever, what that's doing is we don't realize the power that those little molecules in our bodies, in our brains have on what we feel or think or the moods that we have. And most of the time, and I I'm not the one who did this either, this research, but most of the time folks that have succumbed to those molecular dumps, if you will, what's happening is that they're trying to treat some sort of pain. And every time you hear the word pain, you think physical.
Mm.
But pain can be emotional, it can be spiritual, it can be anything. And a substance that floods your brain with a feel good chemical that your body makes. I hate using the word chemical, but substance that your body already
Yeah.
makes. I mean, imagine how appealing that is when you know that you hurt. Again, whatever that may
Yeah,
be.
yeah.
But this substance makes you feel a little better.
Well, and this is what I say, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And you can correct me if I'm wrong. And once again, anybody that's hearing my voice that's out there listening to this, if you want to tell me that I'm full of it, then you know the number you can call. But
Yeah.
here's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. The drugs, everybody thinks that in the substance addiction world, that the drugs are the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And what I say is that the drugs are the answer, and that's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
What we are looking to do, what we do at Beacon, is we show these people that there is another the drug. The answer isn't whatever that is. The answer is so simple. It's
Mm-hmm.
this, which
Mm-hmm.
is what it's here.
It's a heart.
Yeah, our heart,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's always been the answer. It's been the answer for me when I was struggling with my addiction,
Right.
okay, for who knows how many years. I just didn't know because I was clouded. And what we do is light, we shine a light on a dark spot.
Mm-hmm.
So, once again, tell me if I'm wrong. The drugs are the answer to whatever it is that's ailing these people, the pain that they're in. And speaking of pain, it could be physical.
Right.
I remember I had a surgery done on my toe, right? And that first night, it was a major surgery.
Yeah.
And that first night, I was in so much pain. I promise you, if you would have come to me and said, here is an oxy, anything, I was in so much pain physically,
Mm-hmm.
I would have taken it
Mm-hmm.
and not really cared. Now, I made it through that night, and here I sit pain free for the most part.
Right.
Okay. But there is, I wonder if the other kind of pain you're talking about is probably more damning, the psychological pain,
Mm-hmm.
the trauma that people like myself were carrying from a childhood that I didn't really enjoy.
Right.
That pain, I wonder if anyone is more damning.
Right. Yeah.
And either one of those pains, I'm physically pained with my toe. Give me a pill,
Mm-hmm.
which luckily for me, my doctor didn't
Yeah.
give me that pill. But the other, they're still taking that substance, and once again, the answer is to take that substance. Is
Mm-hmm.
that did I? Is that right?
It totally makes
Yeah.
sense what you're saying. And I think just like anything else in medicine, it'll be person specific.
Okay.
So I think you're absolutely onto something in saying that sometimes there are certain pains that are more damning for that person than it may be for the person beside them
Yeah.
or the person down the street or in the next city or the next state, whatever it may be. I think it becomes a very personal journey, just like our faith becomes a very personal journey. And it's going to look different
For different
for
people.
different people. And I hearken back to treatment because right now, with the polysubstance epidemic that we're experiencing, whereby it's fentanyl and, we talk about fentanyl and methamphetamine, fentanyl and cocaine, fentanyl and what I'm finding is, and what we're all observing, is that you're now really complicating both the possibility of recovery. It's never impossible. So please hear us that it is never impossible, but it complicates things when our clients, our patients oftentimes don't even know what it is that they're taking. They see a dirty 30. They see a blue pill that looks like an oxy. They know that it's from the street. They think it's probably oxycodone, but in reality, it could be
So,
anything.
so what you're saying to me, I have given this
Mm-hmm.
example. I don't. So we do ketamine
Mm-hmm.
at Beacon. Now that ketamine is made in a compounding pharmacy.
Right.
And I kind of get the visualization that it's like a scene out of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory where they're doing something and everybody's gloved up and they're wearing the white suits. It's a sterile environment where the ketamine is produced.
Mm-hmm.
On the contrast of that, where this stuff you just described, I'm envisioning, right, a guy with a cigarette hanging out of his mouth, yellow gloves, right, some sort of a mask with maybe a cigarette, and he's got a wife beater on and he's stirring stuff in a bathtub. I'll just add a little more of this because you
Uh-huh.
don't know what is in that pill.
Right.
But you think,
You
but you,
think.
once again, your answer is that whatever it is, and you don't really care. I've had so many people that have had a heroin addict issue,
Mm-hmm.
right? Addiction
Mm-hmm.
issue, but they will all say it's heroin or whatever I can get my hands on.
Right. Scary.
And whatever that is, we're just going to hope that there's something in there that's not going to kill me. And the problem is, unfortunately, oftentimes it is going to kill you and does.
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound about? Am I?
You're spot on.
Because we don't know what's in that.
Yes, you're spot on. I remember back in the day the Just Say No campaign for drugs. And right or wrong, whatever,
Yeah,
it was an attempt, right?
yeah,
But back then, there was a lot of experimentation. There was a lot of, you know what, my friends are doing it. I'm just going to try it. They're having fun. You know what? And that's a foray. That's a
yeah.
first step into it. Okay. So then you fast forward to the last 8 years. And in fact, probably even the last 3 to 4 years has become even worse. But that I'm going to try it mentality, that my friends are doing it, they're not dying, none of that holds water anymore because of exactly what you just said. The way that these illicitly manufactured or They're not a pharmaceutical. They're not a medicine. They may look like a pharmaceutical or a medicine, but they are not. If you get it from the street, always assume that it is not. And then from there, it's a crapshoot, pardon my French, but it is a crapshoot as to what that person's going to get in that substance powder, pill, liquid,
So
whatever it may be.
you're saying crapshoot. I prefer to say a shit show
It's that bad.
because that's what it
It's
is.
that bad.
And the people that are behind this,
Hmm.
right?
They only care about money.
Yeah, they have no regard for human life
Mm-mm.
at all. Now, when I say the people, I'm not talking about the people on the street because you were talking about these people you're getting stuff off the street.
Mm-hmm.
My assertion is, once again, if you think I'm full of it, you can call me on it. The biggest drug dealer on planet Earth is the US government, creating this problem by prescribing these pills, getting people hooked on these pills, whatever they are, and then the prescription runs out. Then these people got to go to the street to get that stiff because they're addicted now. Then they got to go to the street and they start with getting what they think is the same pill. And at some point, their dealer says, "Well, that's really expensive, 48 to $80 a pill. What about this little bag of heroin? It's a lot cheaper and it goes a lot further." Now they're addicted to heroin. And eventually, after who knows how many decades, they make the determination, I don't want to be on heroin anymore. I want to get right. Well, then they're going to get on Suboxone and Subutex. They're just trading one that's illegal for one that's legal. And they're on that forever and a day.
Mm-hmm.
And all the while, somebody is making a lot of money.
Yeah, and you do speak to a good point. Like that, when we look back at the history, and no one would ever argue this, that the prescribing of opioids, especially back in the day, a lot of clinicians, and this could be a whole podcast on its own, and I certainly am not an expert
Yeah.
because pain was never my forte.
Hmm.
But when you look back at the data and the various publications that are out there, it shows a trajectory of increased prescribing of those opioids back in the day. Okay.
Mm.
Just like you were mentioning. And then when that prescription ran out, oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes, that person, if their bodies responded favorably, and I'm using, for those of us that aren't watching this in video, I'm using air quotes, but favorably, what'll happen is the body responds very well in those favorable situations to the opioid and the person really wants it. On the opposite side of the coin, there are people out there that if they get an opioid, they get so sick. They feel horrible, nauseous, it's awful. So you got to remember that now we've got these prescribing. Okay, so now we pull back on prescriptions and again, trying to do the right thing, but it's swung so far that now folks, when they lose that prescription or when it runs out, essentially, they still like that feeling.
Long after the pain is gone.
Absolutely. Or in conjunction with. So you speak to a good point, either long after the pain's gone or in conjunction with, because that opioid still can help manage that pain. And I don't want people to think that a very well prescribed protocol for
Yeah.
pain is a bad thing. It's
You're,
not,
so what you
it's a
just
good thing.
said then, I think if I understand you correctly, is somebody that is experiencing chronic pain,
Hmm.
right? It's just going to happen.
It's going to happen.
You I live with headaches from a military injury. I have a headache now.
Hmm.
It's manageable,
Yeah,
right? But I just live with a
it's always
headache.
there.
It's always there in varying degrees,
Yeah,
right? It's
yeah.
in, sometimes people are a pain in my butt and the headache gets worse. That was supposed to be funny, but
It
I live
happens.
with a headache,
Yeah,
right? Some people, in fact, live with a type of pain that they can't live with,
right.
so to speak. And so there we are. They're taking whatever pill they're taking. They might be taking these pills for the rest of their life. I think the objective with those folks is to wonder if their dosage goes up because they get an immunity to whatever it is they started. Is that right?
So there is this element of tolerance for
Okay.
sure in pretty much anything, even caffeine.
Yeah.
You know, we know caffeine is a drug. Again,
Yeah.
in the definition of that is it changes the body somehow. So even supplements, a lot of people say, well, it's natural, it's not going to hurt me. Nope, that's not true because it changes something in the body chemistry wise or electrical wise. It'll change something. That's kind of that definition of drug. So when you think of something that is entering your body, entering your body, entering your body, eventually there is a level, a ceiling that is reached in terms of whether or not that person can get that pain relief. They can get that acid reflux relief.
Yeah.
They can get, so you're hitting that ceiling. So a couple things can happen. You get a increase in your dose because your doctor says, okay, let's bump up the dose a little bit. You may increase the number of pills that you take.
Which is in essence doing the same thing.
Essence doing the same thing. Or they may switch you completely to something else that has a little bit of
More
a
potency.
different, and
Yeah.
different mechanism in the body too. That's why you've got a whole family of medicines sometimes, but each of the sort of siblings, if I can say it, under that family name umbrella, can move and change and do things differently in the body, just slightly. And so sometimes somebody may be on this particular medicine, and then in that same family, there's another one, but it works just a little bit different in the body. So
Yeah.
again, that's that person to person variation or difference that can occur. But back to the tolerance, absolutely, it happens with pharmaceuticals, it happens with supplements, and it can happen with illicit
And
substances.
as I'm thinking about me in my full-on addiction with what you just described, so I was taking these, whatever these are,
Right?
right? And well, there's still a half a bottle of those. Now I'm going to go over and take these, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hmm, what would happen, I wonder, if I took one of these with
Mm-hmm.
one of these
Right.
at the exact same time? What's that going to be like? I mean, this is me thinking about this from that perspective because that's exactly what I'm thinking. As soon as you said this, we're going to go from this to this. This worked for me for 6 months to a year, whatever this is. Now we're switching to this, and I might do this for 3 or 4 months. But you think I'm throwing that stuff away? I am not.
Mm-hmm.
It's on my shelf. It's got a great shelf life, and at some point, right, I'm going to think, what happens if I mix the two together? Very similar to me with my headaches. I will oftentimes take my Motrin, my ibuprofen. It's a 800 milligram tablet. I'll cut it in half, and I'll mix it with
Acetaminophen.
what you said,
Mm-hmm.
right? A half one of those. That's a great cocktail for my headache.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. But that just explains exactly not what everybody goes through. We're
Yeah.
not going to foul swoop everything,
Yeah.
but you become your own alchemist. You become your own chemist.
Yeah.
You know your body.
Yeah.
You know what responds, what doesn't respond, what
Yeah.
combinations work. But the difference is that you've made that choice. Whereas if you were to get, an acetaminophen, you think from a dealer, you have no red clue
Yep.
if that's truly
Well,
acetaminophen
sure you do, because that's what he
or,
said.
yeah, that's right. We always trust our dealers.
Yeah,
What?
sure.
No, they
But
are
we
not your
do.
friends.
Oh, but they're my best
I
friend,
know.
So,
right?
my
I know.
friends, I wonder if I might chime in here a
Yeah.
Yes.
little bit, just because we're short on time, and I want to make sure to circle back to kind of the sensitivity that you both expressed that was so beautiful, which was the spiritual sensitivity that you share.
Yeah.
And as I've been listening, as someone who's been in recovery for quite some time, I I the question that I keep hearing is, well, but what about the spirit? And what about like, we could describe ourselves almost like as like lab rats, and we're just like, what'll happen if we give this pill, and if we like, as if
Yeah.
we do not have like a higher consciousness and an awareness to be able to navigate these issues with a higher sensitivity. So I wonder if we could, from both of you, I would love to hear, like what else? Like, yes, there are all these substances, and we're trying to figure out what to do with our bodies, right?
Mm-hmm.
But how do we perhaps have some grace or guidance in navigating that based on
So
what
I'm
you just
I'm gonna go first,
spoke
Yes.
real
of?
quick.
Right.
We have a patient. Actually, we have a person that works at Beacon Recovery. Started doing drugs at the age of 6, watching his older brothers.
Wow.
Graduated to heroin at the age of 11.
Wow.
And same thing. I did whatever I could,
Yeah.
he would say,
Yeah.
right? Who now works for Beacon Recovery, went through the program. Now, he made a statement. He did coin this, okay? When we are stuck in our addiction, we are soulless.
Mm.
That's why you see these people that are stuck in their addiction. Their eyes are dark
Mm.
because they have no light inside of them. So the objective, to answer your question, right, is when we bring them into Beacon Recovery, right, to introduce to them the light. You can't go into a common room in Beacon Recovery without seeing a picture of Jesus Christ in some capacity.
Right.
It's a constant reminder to invite that light, because that's what Jesus Christ is.
Mm-hmm.
He is light, light, light. And we are as well. The three of us in this room, we have the same light inside of us. And I tell people all the time, right? You got the light of Jesus Christ in you. And they're like, what are you, mad?
Yeah.
And I say to them, I can prove it. And they get all comfortable. Okay, go ahead. And I'm like, okay, well, you're breathing and you're blinking. So it might not be as bright as mine, but there is a light inside of all of us.
Mm-hmm.
It's up to us to fan that flame.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, look, there's some embers going there, right? So when they're doing, when I was stuck in my addiction, I didn't give two thoughts about anything other than getting my next fix.
Right.
Does that make any sense? I mean, can you speak to that as well? Because you and I share that same love for
Mm-hmm.
Jesus Christ
Right.
and God.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. I said it.
Yeah.
Right? You agree,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love what Sarah said too, and it brought back a picture to me, um, of a white piece of paper, and I, you mentioned it a couple times now that Jesus is light, and I keep thinking, when you've got so much light, and there's a bit of darkness there, so like a white piece of paper and maybe a little ballpoint pen of from a black pen. Yeah, you're going to see that a little bit, but that light, it drowns everything else out. Whereas if you've got a dark piece of paper where that you're in that dark space, and that's not to say that even when you accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior, you're still going to potentially have times where you feel like you're walking through that valley, where you're walking
Yeah.
through the darkness,
Yep.
but even that, if you shine light through or into that dark space, the first thing you see is that light.
I love that.
So when you compare and contrast that, light always wins.
Mm-hmm.
The challenge is knowing that we're still very human. We still live in it's a beautiful world, but it's a fallen world. That bad things happen. We make bad decisions sometimes. Does that mean we're bad people? Well, we go back and we, leave it at the cross and we ask for forgiveness,
And there it is. The
You're not
repentance of
going to be
Jesus. I
perfect.
mean, his atonement,
Right.
right,
Yeah,
absorbs everything.
that's
It's
right.
such a beautiful thing that
Right.
all of us, in those dark times, look, every day is a challenge for all of us,
Yes.
right? And every day, so with me, I get overwhelmed at times because there's a lot of moving parts.
Right.
And I feel like, oh my gosh, am I having a nervous breakdown right now at this moment?
Mm-hmm.
And I can always and do say, oh, wait. And as soon as I think of Jesus,
Yeah.
I just, okay, you're going to be okay. You've always been okay. I've always been with you, and
Right.
I always will be with you, no matter what. And that's the other thing. I have done things in my life where I've thought to myself, well, I just did that again.
Mm-hmm.
And so since I did that, well, I'm not worthy. There's a word.
Right.
Yeah, because I'm dirty and
Mm-hmm.
because of what I just did, he doesn't want to hear from me.
Right.
Well, that is the lie.
That's a lie.
That is the lie from the great liar,
Yep.
saying that you've done that thing, that needle in your arm, of which I've had in mine,
Yeah.
right? That, whatever it is, so you're not worried. And then what I do, I beat myself up for weeks, months, and sometimes years I did without talking to him. And all the time, he's waiting for me
Right.
to come to him, right? And
Yeah.
now I come to him every day, even when I'm a knucklehead,
Yeah.
right? Because he still loves me,
That's right.
right?
Yeah, you can't change that. Like
Mm-mm.
he loves, I mean, Jesus died for a reason. It
Yes.
wasn't because he was like, yeah, let's just do this.
Yeah.
It was painful, it was horrific, but it was a reason and because of that love. Now, again, fully expecting that none of us are going to toe the line and be perfect. And he knew that. And that's why, that's that sacrifice. But coming back to the addiction side of things, I think just like what you were saying, in that shame, in that guilt,
Yep.
in that feeling, that treadmill of yuck, then we're using again. Then we're like, well, I might as well because I did it this
I
morning.
can't even tell you how many.
So,
And you know what?
yeah,
And I might go for a minute, and then that first time because I stubbed my toe, my girlfriend broke up with me, I lost my job, I wrecked my car. It could be any number of things.
right.
And I know I'm not supposed to, I know I shouldn't, but I just did.
Yeah.
And well, you know what? I just stepped in it. And so guess what I get to do? I'm okay. I feel
Yeah.
good about it now because I'm going to live in that space for a minute. Might
Mm-hmm.
as well have fun while I'm here
Yep.
because now I've already done it. I'm not going to talk to him because I'm here.
I'm
And,
embarrassed.
and I'm
Yeah.
full of shame and
Yep.
guilt. And that's when the deceiver has me,
Yep.
which is what he wants. He
Exactly.
wants everybody to be miserable like unto himself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yep.
Now, for us, we can have faith. And when I talk about faith, every single time I say these three words: who touched me?
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
look those three words up, right?
Yep.
And that woman,
At just the hem of his garment.
she is my hero.
Yeah.
And when I cross over, I'm going to
Yeah.
go get in that line to give her a hug,
That's right.
right? Because she
Yeah.
saved me.
Yeah.
Actually, I saved me by her example of faith.
You're right.
We can have faith,
Yeah.
right?
That's right.
That it's going to be okay as long as we go to the right source. And
Right.
just so everybody that can hear me knows, I refer to him as my Father in heaven,
Right.
right? I don't care, honestly, what it is for you. It could be God, deity, the universe, third eye, chakra. It doesn't matter. Go to that
Yeah.
with regularity and cling to it. Whatever you work with, whatever that looks for you, and stay in that spot.
And I think when people find that there's a constant in their lives that love them. Now, we all know that if you keep the frequency open, God is always communicating with us. We may not, it's not going to be audible all the time, maybe
Mhm.
not ever for some
It's
people.
never been audible for me.
For me, it's scripture. So I'll just get this whatever, John 3:16, and I'll be like, what, where did, oh boy, I needed that. So it's not, so everybody will, just like, again, getting back to medicine, everybody will respond differently and receive differently.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, a really big key. Now, does that make fighting an addiction any easier? On the surface, you may not think so. But the depth of it,
Yeah.
when you can hang literally, like I love your name, Beacon. When you can hang on to something with such consistency, your entire world can be blowing up. And it happens to a lot of us. But you have that consistency
Yeah.
that that even though you don't have this audible dialogue saying, it's going to be okay, it's going to be okay, you know that you can go to scripture, you can go to prayer,
Yeah.
you can get on your knees, you
Yep.
can. And again,
Yep.
does that mean that all the bad stuff goes away in this world?
No.
No, it's a fallen world. But building that relationship with God
Mm-hmm.
is that beacon, is that
Well,
consistency that
and
you need.
that beacon you're referring to,
Yeah,
that name has been designed from him.
right.
If you, I like to use word pictures. If
Hmm.
you are in the desert, or say for me, when I was in the Navy, I'm in the Navy. I'm visualizing me, like Tom Hanks when he's castaway, right? And I'm in the ocean. I'm done.
Hmm.
I've resolved myself to the fact that it's over,
Hmm.
right? I'm not doing it anymore. And if you go to that scene where he's toast,
Yeah.
then he sees the light from that ship. We can associate that life with a beacon. I'm now in the ocean or in the desert. I'm done. But oh, wait, there's a beacon of light.
Hmm.
At the instant I see that, like Tom Hanks did in the movie, he got more strength and he was like, he couldn't say much, but he was able to raise it. He was done.
Yeah.
That beacon of light
Yeah.
is and that's the light of Jesus Christ. It's
Yeah.
there. And when we see it, we get a same thing. Our brain releases a different
Hmm.
dopamine, if you will, right? That gives us the strength to say, I can take another step and more steps to get towards that. And that light,
Right.
it is the light. of Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
That's what that beacon of light represents.
I have to say, it's
Yeah.
really beautiful to hear this intersection of spirituality and what you might call science. You know, you're a doctor. You're describing the
Yeah,
ways
yeah.
that these substances function in our bodies, and yet we're also talking about our spirit. And I know that we kind of need to wrap up, and I just wanted to invite you, Kelly, to just speak any last, wrapping those two things together in such a lovely way as you have been.
Well, thanks, Sarah.
Hmm.
I think one of the things that I get a lot of pushback in is, how can you be a scientist and still be a believer? And I look at that person, I think, how can you not?
Yeah.
Right.
There is so much that is not, I mean, it's not chance. It's a beautiful, beautiful birth, it's creation. It's all of these things. You look at the inside of a flower that's blossomed and
Yeah.
you know immediately that this is, I mean, the hands of the great artist,
Right.
the greatest, and
Yeah.
the great physician and the great scientist. Like all of these things come together. So if I were to kind of wrap, like a bow around sort
Yeah.
of what I've been learning, and it's constant. Like I am always, always
A
learning
pupil.
more. Yes.
Yeah.
I sit at the feet, and I just listen to Jesus and I read and I this and I that because there are times where I'm really mad and
Yeah.
and I don't understand things, and then there are times where I'm like, "Oh, I get it." We'll never get everything on this side of
So you're
heaven,
saying
right?
you're
So
human?
I know it's weird. It's
Yeah.
so weird, the struggles. But when I look at, like I said, that consistency, that you guys remember that old poem, Footprints?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So when I looked at that, when I was ready. So sometimes I'll read things and I'll be like, okay, yeah, cool, just like scripture. Okay, cool. That's really interesting. Thank you for that word, God. Then when I really need it and I read it and I just think, oh, Lord, I am so sorry that I didn't pay more attention. I didn't know. And that's what I want your listeners to grab onto is that there are times where you may not need that word. And then there are other times where you need to take that word and give it to somebody else. And then there are times where it hits you like a ton of bricks
Yeah.
and you need to just absorb it. So my point is don't give up.
Mm.
When you give up, you fall short of what you can do for yourself and what you can do to serve other people. And I think that that's the real piece here is yes, you're struggling. Yes, life hurts. There are times where it hurts a lot, but you still have that in you that you can not only help yourself, but you can use your experiences and your testimony. And what I mean by testimony is your experience with God and wrestling with him and being angry, but always going back to the love that he has for us
Yeah.
and knowing that one word of kindness can plant a seed for somebody else, and then that seed and that harvest basically then can enrich our lives too. We don't do it for that reason, but it's amazing, just one kind word and never giving up.
Even a smile.
Even a smile.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
So
beautiful. Thank you,
I
Kelly.
want to see if
Yeah,
we can get you
absolutely.
to agree
Yes, I'm already saying
to
yes.
have a part two.
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
so we get more
Yeah,
of the good doctor,
that sounds
right?
good.
At a later date.
Yes.
I'm going to put you on the spot. When this is done, we're going to get you on the schedule,
Yes,
and
I like it.
then we'll go to part two.
I like it.
Wonderful.
Okay.
I
Yeah,
love it.
thanks, you
Thank you,
guys.
Okay.
Kelly. Thank you,
Yeah,
Thank
Tony.
you.
Yeah.
thank you.